Russian troops are pushing forward in Ukraine in an effort to seize the eastern city of Bakhmut.
That's right. The city has stayed in Ukraine's control since the start of the war, despite Russia's goal of capturing the entire Donbas region. The revived push comes as Ukrainian troops make substantial gains in the south to reclaim illegally annexed areas from Russia. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams joins us now. Hi, Holly. Great to see you. So Russian forces are attempting to seize Bakhmut, which has remained in Ukrainian control since the start of the war. What would taking the city mean to Russia as Ukraine continues to have success reclaiming that illegally annexed territories in the southern part of the country?
So in the last few months, we've seen Russia suffer a whole series of quite embarrassing failures here in Ukraine, including losing swaths of territory in the northeast, some territory in the south, and now the authorities in the southern city of Kherson, those authorities are put in place by Moscow, who have evacuated civilians ahead of an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive. A lot of those embarrassing failures have been pretty widely reported in the Russian media, including the Russian state media, and the tone of that at times has been sort of close to despair. Now Russian forces seem to be focusing on this one quite small city of Bakhmut in the east. As far as we understand, it has no great strategic significance, but perhaps the thinking of the Russians is that if they can take that small city of Bakhmut, they can perhaps sell it to the Russian public as a major victory.
Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin slammed the U.S. and the so-called Western elites for intensifying the war in Ukraine during his annual foreign policy speech on Thursday. Additionally, Putin also claimed that the Kremlin never intended to use nuclear weapons on the battlefield. How are Ukrainians responding to his remarks?
Yeah, this was quite a strange speech, even by Vladimir Putin standards. He blamed the West, and in particular so-called Western elites, for the war in Ukraine and pretty much for everything else that's wrong with the world at this point. He really cast Russia as a victim, and at times it seemed reminiscent of the Soviet past. There were some new things in it, though. He railed against gay pride parades and cancel culture. He also, as you just said that it would make no sense for Russia to use a nuclear weapon. That's despite having threatened to use a nuclear weapon. I think it's fair to say that at this point here in Ukraine, they treat everything that Vladimir Putin says with a huge dollop of skepticism. I thought it was also very interesting President Biden's reaction to Putin saying that it made no sense for Russia to use nuclear weapons. He said, quote, "If he has no intention, why does he keep on talking about it?"
Right. And Holly, you had an incredibly powerful interview with an American soldier who volunteered to fight in Ukraine earlier this week. And during that discussion, he told you about Russia's tactical use of white phosphorus and the devastating effects he's seeing it having on the battlefield. What more can you tell us about this weapon and whether this would be sort of a new page in Russia's invasion to Ukraine?
So white phosphorus is a chemical that when it's exposed to oxygen, it ignites. And it has a number of legitimate military purposes on the battlefield, including providing a smoke screen for forces as they move forward or marking a target. But it also burns things when it touches them, and that includes people. And that's what that American volunteer was talking about. He claimed that he heard several Ukrainian soldiers essentially being burned alive and some of them committing suicide with their own pistols. It was very disturbing. Russia has denied previously that it's used white phosphorus munitions here in Ukraine, but the Ukrainians have been claiming that the Russians have been using it almost since the start of the invasion. We should point out that white phosphorus munitions are not illegal under international law, but it is forbidden to use them against civilians.
Gosh, it's disturbing. Holly Williams in Ukraine, thank you so much.